Hi there, this is Andre from PSD Box, and today I want to show you how I went from this image to this. So this is a retouching tutorial. Well, not really a tutorial, just an overview. I want to show you the process that I went through and what I did to this image to end up with this. So it's not going to be a really detailed tutorial, but just to show you what I did to this image. Now this is a free stock image. I'll give you the link to it so you can download it and maybe try it for yourself. But I want to show you what I usually do when I make this kind of retouching. So again, this is the end result. Let me zoom out a bit, and this is the original image. So of course you start with the original image, and the first thing that I always do, so I always follow the same process, is use the spot healing brush tool, and I use that to get rid of all the imperfections on the skin, all the spots. And for that I create a new layer, and I check this option, sample all layers, and paint on this new layer, so that that way I don't affect the original image. So this is the before and after. So before and after, you can see all the spots here have been removed. Also here on the arm, a few spots. So remove all the imperfections that you can using this tool. So as I said, create a new layer, select this tool, I check the sample all layers option, and just paint with it. Make sure you use a soft brush and adjust the size to the imperfections that you are dealing with, and just remove all the spots that you see on the skin. The more time you spend doing that, the better the end result will be. So spend as much time as you need to clean all the skin. The next step I do, and I always do that after I use the spot healing brush tool, is make the skin smoother. And if you followed some of my previous tutorials, I like to use the mixer brush tool. And I think this is only available for the extended version of Photoshop CS5. I don't know if Photoshop CS4 has this tool, but there are alternatives to this tool. Some people use the smudge tool, but I don't really like it. But if you don't have anything else, you can use that one. And another way of making the skin smoother is going to filter and applying, let me select an active layer, is using the surface blur. So you can see it makes the skin a bit smoother, and then use the layer mask and just hide parts like the eyes or the hair. But as you can see, it loses the texture, and that's why I don't really like this technique. But if that's the only thing you have to go with that. I use the mixer brush tool all the time, and this is the result that I got. So before and after, and if I zoom into 100%, you will see that there is still a texture on the skin, so it's not lost. And you can also see that the shadows are smoother, and well, the highlights as well. And this is how I use this tool, just as before. Create a new layer, choose the mixer brush tool. You have these options here. I pretty much use the same options all the time and never change them. So use values between 15 and 20%. Again, check sample all layers so that you're working non-destructively, and just zoom in. Use a soft brush and a medium size brush. Just start brushing the skin, and you'll have to be careful with this tool, because this tool works a bit like the smudge tool. You're kind of smudging the highlights and the shadows, and you're mixing them together, so you have to be careful not to remove them. So for example, I have this vein and this shadow here. If I want to cover it, I have to go over it. So drag from this lighter part of skin on top of it, just like that, and you will see that it will go away. So before and after, you can see that now it's a lot smoother. So with this tool you have to follow the shadows and the highlights. If I do this, I drag this highlight from here over the shadow, which is not good, so you have to follow the direction of the shadow and the highlights. And just repeat the process for until you cover all the skin. And I mentioned this on other tutorials, like the Fallen Angel. When I made that manipulation, I used that tool again, and on other tutorials as well. So just a quick sample of what you can do with this tool. Okay, let me disable the layer, so before and after. So you can see that you can make the skin really nice with this tool. And if it's too smooth and you don't have texture, you can add some noise and reduce the opacity, but it usually keeps some of the texture. So let me show you the original. This is the result that I got with the mixing brush tool. The next thing that I did is use the Liquify filter, and I don't really like to use this tool to change the shape of the face. I like to leave the face natural, so to say. And for that, again, I wanted to work non-destructively, so I created a new layer, a stamp actually, and I did that with Shift, Control, Alt, and E, and that creates a stamp of all the visible layers. And is this one here, which I named Liquify. And then I applied the Liquify filter to this layer, and what I did is just fix this area here and also here on the arm, as you can see there. And I also added just a bit of a smile, you can see here on the lips, and straightened the nose just a bit. So that's all with the Liquify filter. Most of the times the first adjustment layer that I use is the color balance, because I like to change the colors and create the mood that I want. In this case I added more cyan and more green. You can see on the midtones. On the shadows I almost always add cyan and blue, and to the highlights I add yellow and red. These are the settings that I use most of the times. And then I added just a bit more light using levels. So I just increased the highlights a bit and also the midtones 0.2. So you can see I'm playing with the really low settings here. Then I added a gradient map, really low opacity at 10% to add more color to the image. And then I changed the color of the eyes. I made them green, and I just used brush tool, painted over them, set the blend mode to overlay, and reduced the opacity to 60%. Next I went to the lips, and I changed the color of them, and I did that with the hue saturation adjustment layer. I filled the layer mask with black to cover the entire image to hide the effect, and then I used the brush tool and painted with white over the lips to unhide the effect, just over the lips. And I can see some areas that I didn't mask here. And then I just changed the color, so you can change the color to whatever color you like. And I checked colorize, and that way I can change the lightness and the brightness of the color. So that's how I made the lips color. I made some pretty bad mistakes here with the masking. Okay, that's how I changed the color of the lips, before and after. If they look too dark to you, just increase the lightness here. Okay, and then I added some makeup on the eyes. The original makeup is already looking nice, but I wanted to change the color. So again, I painted with a soft brush, and I created a layer mask to hide the effect, because as you can see I painted way too much. And here you can see that I also painted over the hair. So then I used a really small brush to hide the effect here on the hair and only leave the effect on the skin, on the eyes. And again, I use the hue saturation adjustment layer as a clipping mask to adjust this. So you can adjust the lightness, you can adjust the saturation, so how much color you want to add. You can change the color, of course. So that's why I like to use these adjustment layers, because as you can see, I have all the controls here. You can change the color at any time. And then again, my favorite tool, the dodging and burning tool. So this is where you got a really nice result with it. So that's what I got with it. So before and after. And as you can see, I duplicated the layer. Create a new layer, go to Edit, Fill, and from here choose 50% gray. Click OK, and change the blend mode to overlay. And now you can use the dodging and burning tool on this layer without affecting the other layers, and you can enhance the highlights and burn the shadows. And that's exactly what I did here. I used a really low opacity on the face, and here on the eyes I increased the exposure, sorry, not the opacity, the exposure of the brush. I usually use about 5% and just go over the same area multiple times, and that's the result. I'll change the blend mode to normal so you can see where I used. So all these brighter areas is where I used the dodge tool, and the dark areas is where I used the burn tool. Let's go back to overlay, and I grouped all this layer. I just duplicated the layer for a stronger effect and reduced the opacity to 50%. So again, before, let me zoom out, and after. You can see I also enhanced the reflections here on the floor using the dodge tool. And then the final adjustments, I created again a new stamp with Shift Control Alt and E, and I turned this into a smart object, and I applied some filters to that, the lighting effects filter, and I'll show you the settings that I have for that. Again, this is just to create a spotlight effect, you will see right now. So before and after, I darkened this part here, the corners, and I added more light here, and you can see the settings here. So before and after. Then I created another stamp, and again with Shift Control Alt and E, and then I went to Image, Adjustments, Variations, and I chose more cyan and click OK, and I got this look here. And I think I reduced the opacity, is this layer here, and I reduced the opacity to 42%, and that created that effect. And then more adjustment layers. I use selective color to kind of shift the colors just a bit. It's not a big of a change, but then another gradient map to add more light and a bit more green. This is a custom gradient. You can see I used a really low opacity, 6%, because I used the divide blend mode because I wanted to add more light. So I used just 6%, so before and after. And then a photo filter to add a bit more blue. Again, a really low opacity and low density. And that's the final result.